desk application that can be built within Power Apps. Now, I've almost become known as the ticketing system guy within Power Apps. Um, so I've got several videos out there. I have a whole course, over 40 hours worth of instruction that goes through building virtually from scratch. I actually started with my Jumpstart kit, building out a rather large or medium to large size application ticketing system. And almost every organization will have need for some type of ticketing system. And some of the use cases that I mentioned in a lot of these videos that I do about ticketing systems is almost every department might need a ticketing system because it really manages the workflow of business processes. So looking at this application that's here on the screen, this particular application gives us three examples. Number one for IT. IT is probably the most well-known use case for a ticketing system. You know, if you need computer help, you're going to call up. You need your password reset. You might fill out a ticket. There's all kinds of different things. Well, think of perhaps the facilities and maintenance department of an organization. You might need a light bulb changed in your cubicle or your office. You might need to have your cubicle or office relocated to a different floor, a different place within the office. What about HR? Let's say somebody had an issue that they needed to bring to HR. They may not call it a ticket, but maybe an incident or something that needs to be tracked and or reported on. There's all kinds of use cases. So ticketing systems are it's a great type of program, an application, a scenario to learn because there's not too much complexity with it, you know. And it can be used for a lot of different applications. Okay, so before I jump into this, I sort of wanted to go over all the different options that you have. So number one, if you go over to my school online learning environment for Power Apps, it's called Learn Power Apps. It's completely free. In fact, if I go over to the community tab, you'll see there's over 1.3 thousand members. And you could go here and ask questions. It's a lot easier to get answers to your questions over here in something like this where you can post videos like Loom videos. That's loom.com. That's a free screen recording software where you can record your screen and sort of go over any type of errors. You know, everybody has some red squigglies in their Power Apps from time to time, right? You can ask requests, you can post screenshots. A lot of that type of asking questions and getting support, getting answers really can't be done in YouTube comments. So that's why I created this online learning community. And actually school.com is seems like it's an up and coming phenomenon. It's a great online learning tool. And in my opinion, it's a little bit like a Facebook group. If you're on Facebook, you're probably familiar with Facebook groups. Everybody creates a Facebook group for one reason or another, right? Well, a school community, I would say is like 10 times better because you don't have any ads, you don't have any distractions. You're just interacting with people. And, you know, a lot of these school environments will have some videos, will have courses that you can take. So, I've got some of my workshop content here. Now I created a new school environment for the workshops, but we have the personal pocket coaching, which is a personal pocket or a pocket size or a bite size video. And it's meant for every day of the year. So over the course of a year, and because this year is a leap year, you'll have 366 videos by the end of that yearly membership. But what I wanted to highlight here is you have the Power Apps Crash Course. So if I were to go in here, there's two modules. The first module is the 10 things you must know. So these are a lot of the lessons that I learned probably the first 6 months trying to learn Power Apps. And the second module is build an app in a day. And what we do in this module, it's very related to the topic that we're going to cover today, um, in that um, in this, I took, well, let me actually open this up here. Um, let me go back to the beginning here. And if you're following along, you got your computer up and hopefully you have a second monitor you can follow along here. And if you go to home within Power Apps, so that's make.powerapps.com. Okay. And if I use my Zoom It tool, which is a free tool from Microsoft, make.powerapps.com. Okay. You log on with your M365 account. There's an option here called Start with an App Template. So I'm going to click on that and show you these application templates if you're not already familiar with them. Now, I actually don't recommend using any of these for production. I recommend these for getting ideas for, because a lot of these were released at the beginning when Canvas Power Apps was released. And the language and the syntax and the rules of the language has changed over time, changed over the years. So if I'm not mistaken, I believe Power Apps was released back in 2017. So here we are in 2024. So we're looking at what, 7 years now. And in the world of IT, that's decades. So these older templates, I commonly refer to them as old and crusty because they there's some issues that you got to work through. Okay, and if you look at my live streams on my YouTube channel, go to the live stream tab and go to the oldest one. And it is about this service desk application. And I spent, what, an hour or two getting this thing to work. And we could actually take a look at this here momentarily. Um, I'm actually expecting an accelerator student to come on tonight. She asked me to cover this, and it was really important to her, and she had a project due next week. And whenever I hear about my accelerator students having deadlines, I want to do everything I can do to help them out meet those deadlines. You might have a promotion on the line. You might have a big freelance contract coming up, and you need to sort of prove yourself. And that's one of my aims in the accelerator program is to help my accelerator students out succeed and get to the goals that they're trying to achieve within Power Apps. So I expect her to come on later tonight. Maybe there's a confusion with the time zone or something. I think I might send her a message here really quick. Just a friendly little reminder, just in case she forgot or she was confused with the time there. Okay, so we have the service desk, and now if I click on next, and let me show you what you'll encounter here. Now, that first live stream that I did where I covered this, for the first 16 minutes, I was echoing, and there was all kinds of problems. And uh, thankfully, a lot of people still stuck around and still watch it to this day. So this is a good topic. I mean, that was my first live stream, guys. So that was probably, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago or so. So it's about time we revisit some of this stuff. And because I've done so much work with ticketing systems. So right now we've got 3 systems out there. We have this one that I looked at with my live stream, my very first live stream. Then we have the ticketing system course, which is over 40 hours of instruction. You might see some of those parts floating around on my YouTube video. A lot of those were done live. So you could probably find a lot of them. I'd say about a third of them are still up there on YouTube. But I saw that as a course. And something I just posted earlier today, if you go over to my school community, I have this, I actually covered this topic, building a schema builder. So this is an interesting topic for me. I wanted to keep track of all my apps, all the requirements for the apps, all the MS app files, and all the schema information. So let's say I wanted to switch from SharePoint lists as a database. There she is. Hey, Virginia. I didn't know if you wanted to be here live. So if I see your video being shown, I'll bring you on. Otherwise, I'll just interact with you here in the private chat. I know we have one or two other people here in the accelerator program in the private chat. So I'll be monitoring that as well as the, okay, very good. So Virginia is here. Very good. And again, if you show your videos, your video, I'll bring you on. Yeah. Okay, very good. Okay, so just to talk a little bit about this, because if you're interested in either a ticketing system, no, I don't want that, or if you're interested in any further training, about Power Apps or ticketing systems, I just want to let you guys know that if you sign up for the personal pocket coaching, you do get my Jumpstart kit. You do get my full ticketing system course that I sell for $500. And then you'll get a full hour tutoring session with me. And I guess my courses are so good when people sign up for the PPC that they're not actually taking advantage of this. A lot of them aren't. Uh, so that's out there. And I do charge $250 an hour for my time. So you get all of this for the same price as I don't like to mention prices in videos because they could change over time. And you could be watching this video 2 years from now. So just know that these prices can change, but I mean, all this is included right now for the price of what you would pay for the ticketing system. Okay. And just to mention the Ultimate Jumpstart Kit, you get a full year of updates to that. And I am going to be making a lot of updates in the next 12 months to that template. Okay, so I'd like to jump in and start making some progress here. It's not meant to be a commercial for anything. I just know that there's a percentage of people watching this right now that are interested in Power Apps, that are interested in ticketing systems, and I just want to bring out all the relevant information. Okay, now if you're watching this, my crash course is completely free. Okay, so what I do in this build an app in a day is I apply the 10 things that you must know, and we applied it to this, what I would call the old crusty service desk application template from Microsoft, but I built it from scratch. Okay, so and you can build an app in a day. I would say maybe an afternoon. And I take a look at this particular template and I sort of analyze the requirements. And if I go over to, actually it's this 12-minute video here. And I believe I do have an ERD diagram, and I want to reference that for this because I took a lot of time and thought about this. Okay, so looking at an ERD diagram for this particular project, you know what? I should make myself smaller here so you guys can see this. Maybe move this around a little bit. There we go. Very good. All right, so the main heart of the application is the tickets table. And we would have departments, the technicians, and then we'd have ticket status. That's pretty much what I would want to have in a database for an application like this. But let me show you what it creates. Okay, so we're actually going to start with this template, but we're gonna build it from scratch. Okay, but I want to make sure that we've got an example to look at and look at the pull out requirements from it. Okay. Okay, just keeping an eye on everything, making sure I'm responding to anything that's coming up. Okay, so whenever you use one of these templates, you're going to get prompted, hey, do you want to make this your own app? And you want to click on that button because essentially what it's going to do is it's going to connect data storage, persistent data storage. So what is non-persistent data storage? Well, your memory, your RAM. If you reboot your computer, all of that's going to be emptied out and started again. Persistent data storage is saving things to a drive, like a hard drive, or in this case, cloud storage. I'm going to go ahead and click on this, make my own app. Now I'm gonna try to cover as much content as possible, and I have a hard stop at 6:30 EST. So I do plan on going the 2.5 hours if need be. Okay, so there's always a lot to cover. There's always something that comes up. Okay, so how many screens do we have in this old template? We've got the dashboard page. We have a ticketing details page, which looks very weird. It's got a bunch of black boxes. Okay, looks like the color's sort of messed up there. Assigned to. So this is typically where you'll see all the technicians listed, and that's broke. The ticket status. Then we have areas. Now, areas is actually departments. Okay. Now, in the interest of getting as much as you can out of this video, and in light of me going as quickly as I can because there's so much to cover, I want to encourage you guys, if you find that I'm going too fast, within the controls within YouTube or whatever video player that you're watching this through, you can actually slow me down. Okay, so here's an example. Now this isn't YouTube, but again, almost all of them have this. If you want to slow me down to 3/4 speed or half, you can do that. If you find that I'm just talking way too slow, you can speed me up too. All right, so I'm going to go back over here. And this is probably, this and the dashboard page are probably the two best looking screens so far. And all these others, these are really basic ones. Okay. So a lot of times what I like to do is I like to sort of um, move these screens around so the most used screens are at the top, or the more important ones are at the top. So I don't have to like search through a list of 20 or 30 screens to get at a screen I'm looking for. Okay, so one of the first things I want to do, I'm going to go back over here to my crash course, and I'm going to go look for, because I know I've got an ERD diagram already done for this, which we just looked at over there. And yeah, I'm going to sign into this, and let's see what we have here. It might take a moment to come up. Okay, so I'm going to search for, I think I called it something like simple ticketing system, something like that. Look at all these ERD diagrams. So this is a tool called Draw SQL app. In fact, let me zoom in on the URL here. Draw SQL app. And if you guys don't already know this is a little side note. Dataverse has released an ERD diagram uh, for the database system. Now we have a good ERD diagram within SQL Server, which is nice. We don't have anything like that in SharePoint. I use this Draw SQL because it works with almost anything. And I think that might be this one right here. So what I can do here is share this with you guys. Okay. And I see Virginia on. How you doing, Virginia? Good to see you. And let me make sure that your volume is up so you can interact with me while we're doing this. Now I can't hear you at all, so maybe there's something going on with your microphone. So while you're working on that, I'm going to, okay, so I've shared that link with you guys.
Hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now I'm gonna change my speaker to my headphones. Let's see here. So I've got a new laptop and it's got so many audio sources. I need to turn that down a little bit. There we go. And I'm looking for, There you go. So now it's completely using my headphones, which is nice. Okay, very good. Um, so I see Juan on, and he says, "Me too. Hello." I don't know if Juan, you've got issues with your audio. Very good. Okay, so now Virginia, I know you're using a big boy database. You're using Microsoft SQL Server out in Azure. So there are going to be some small changes. I'm going to be using SharePoint because 70 or more percent of people who are using Power Apps, they're using SharePoint. So what I'm going to do as we go through this, Virginia, is if there are any things that are especially different between SharePoint and SQL Server, I'll mention that. Obviously, SQL Server is a much better data source than SharePoint, but thankfully, in SharePoint we have ID, which I'm sure that you use as an identity field. And if you guys don't know what an identity field in SQL Server is, it's sort of like what you have in SharePoint with the ID, and it's an auto number. That's actually what it's called in Microsoft Access, um, where you're using typically it's an integer and it starts off with one, and the second row has two, the third one is three. Now, if you go and delete the second record, that number two ID is out the door, never to be used again. Um, I'll keep that in mind, Virginia, that you're going to be doing this completely in SQL Server, and we'll be going over anything that's different between the two systems. So let's go in here and now I believe I do have, I'm going to move this tab over here and actually look for it, because that would actually save me a lot of time. The data sources is all right here, the ERD diagram. Okay, so I'm going to create a new tab, and as I told you guys, I'm going to be starting from scratch. I'm going to click on new app. I'm going to start with the page design. And guys, I've got some really good news for you. Are you ready for this?
Yes.
Microsoft has released all that YAML code viewing, copying, pasting feature. It's live. So if you look at a screen, you can look at the code and you can copy and paste this code between applications, between screens. Um, so this is great. I'm super excited. I'm almost more excited about this than I was with the user defined functions. Okay, so let's start off, and we're going to be taking a lot of inspiration from this app, of course. Now, when it creates the data source, it's going to create a spreadsheet within your OneDrive. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my File Explorer and go look in OneDrive. And I'm going to show you the data source that it's using. And I'm going to sort of compare and contrast what the differences are between the data source that it provides and what the ERD diagram that I have here. And if you guys give me a moment. Now, Virginia, looking at this ERD diagram, is this pretty much similar to what you have going on within SQL Server, or have you changed it a little bit?
Yeah, no, it's pretty much the same. I have more tables than you do just because
Yeah.
the situation where mine is not a help desk. It's like you said earlier today. Mine is for interventions. We have sales reps who placed orders, but the order is not going to move fast enough. So the sales rep needs help. Somebody manually go into the system from our call center or support group and push that order to go through faster. So that's
Okay.
the purpose of this tool for us.
Very good. Um, and what's great about this Draw SQL tool is it supports SQL Server, MySQL, and Postgres. So if you're using any of those three data sources, what you can do, and Virginia, I believe that you actually use this tool, right? And you are
Yeah.
able to do an export, it created a script, a TSQL or a Microsoft SQL Server script that you could execute within SQL Server Management Studio and run it, and it'll just create all your tables for you directly from what you created here. So
In
all
less
the
than a
data,
second.
what's that?
In less than a second.
Yeah, SQL Server is fast, much faster than probably what we're used to with SharePoint and Dataverse between Power Apps and these two data sources. But um, Dataverse is actually a SQL Server database underneath the scenes, and they bolt on features on top of that to sort of lower the learning curve. There's quite a bit of things to learn with SQL Server. So Dataverse sort of gives us that advantage where we don't have to mess with so much of the complexity um, than what we do with SQL Server. Now, Virginia, if you don't mind sharing with the viewers any big lessons learned of working with SQL Server so far that maybe you didn't realize before you took on a project that was using SQL Server? I know I'm putting you on the spot here.
No, that's okay. Well, first of all, I didn't understand the relationships. The I thought you had to have like a one-to-one and many-to-many and one-to-many and all of that. You don't have to worry about that with SQL. It does it
Yeah.
for you. So that was a huge eye opener for me.
Yeah.
And then another thing I didn't realize that you have the diagrams within SQL Server as well. I mean, I've
Hmm.
always just queried tables. I've never really created a database myself from scratch. So that was another big eye opener for me.
Yeah.
And then the fact that you've helped me enter my data. So still working on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are the few things that I can share.
Yeah, very good. I know that you have been working with somebody in IT that created the SQL Server for you, and then they left up to you to create the database. And it sounds like the person that you're working with, maybe that's not their area of expertise, but they went and researched or they knew enough to create some initial things. But for a large part, it seems like they've left a lot of the things up to you to sort of do. Um, I'm going to log into my other tenant where I think I have this SharePoint site here.
So thank
And
you
I'm
for
hope,
saying that because MySQL is on Azure. So I don't know, for some people it might
Mhm.
just be on prem, but mine is on Azure. So then
Okay.
this individual did help me because of the permissions to make sure that the gateway is established for me to
Mhm.
allow my app to connect to the Azure SQL Server through that gateway that they created for me.
Okay, very good. Um, yeah, things are different between an on-premise SQL server and one that's out in the cloud in Azure or maybe even Amazon Web Services. So I think that you've been exposed to some of the aspects and you're learning a lot of really cool things working with SQL Server. SQL Server is my favorite data source to use within Power Apps. Um,
Darren,
and
I do have to say a big one for me.
what's
When
that?
you're creating the draw SQL, if you do create an ERD,
Hmm.
the primary keys, the data type, they all need to match. That was a huge one for me as well.
Oh
I
yeah.
didn't realize that, so I had to go back and make sure that my primary IDs, I'm sorry, keys were matching, because if not, they won't tie in.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, your types need to be the same. Um, with SharePoint, there is what's called a lookup column, and that's how you create foreign keys to the one side of the relationship. You create the foreign keys on the many, but it points to the one relationship. So let's say, for example, we have well, in this case, we have tickets. So let's say a user is experiencing a problem. Let's say they need their password reset. So me as a user, I would create a ticket one day for a password reset, but maybe tomorrow, maybe I dropped my laptop or spilled Coke on it. Now I need a new laptop. So I'd fill out another ticket. So there's a one to many relationship between a person and all the tickets that can be created. Now within SharePoint, you would create what's called a lookup column, which I don't recommend, by the way. And the reason why I don't recommend that, I don't recommend lookup columns, any complex types. I don't recommend choice columns at all anywhere. So when I say anywhere, I mean SharePoint or Dataverse. Um, choice columns, I think if you have a choice column, typically you need a new table. You don't want to create, if you go over to SQL Server, have you noticed that there's no choice column within SQL Server yet? Have you come across that?
Yep.
Yeah. Um, now, lookup columns over in Dataverse, that is how you establish relationships. And within SQL Server, you do have like an ERD diagram, and how I create them is I work with the ERD diagram, and whenever you create these lines, these are called relationships. Now you see these three little lines. This means a many, and this side means one. So I got a one to many, one to many, one to many. And whenever you create these in the SQL Server ERD diagram within SQL Server Management Studio, it actually creates those foreign keys for you. But again, as you pointed out, if I have, let's see, I've got a department ID. Let's see, where's department? Okay, so I got a department. Now in this case, I'm storing the department name in here, and I'm pointing over here to title. Um, yeah, this relationship is actually backward. One to many. Yeah. So you got one department in many tickets, and same thing here. So I want to make sure if I'm showing you guys this is actually accurate. So there we go. That's better. that was bothering me a little bit. Um, so what I recommend with SharePoint is just create a separate table, and let's say we've got something like a department tech, okay, which goes over here to assign to. Now, sometimes with users, I just put their email address in there. Um, but a lot of cases, what you want to have is like an ID. Okay, since this is the primary key, typically you do want your foreign keys to point to primary keys in the other tables. Okay, and those types, whatever relationship this is based on, those types need to be the same. Absolutely. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to move this up to a different screen, and I'm going to create these SharePoint lists quickly. You already have your database tables created, right?
Yes.
All right. So service desk, if I can type desk, app rewrite. That's what I'm going to call it here. And I'm going to let anybody in the organization see it. I'm going to create the site. Add members. You know what? I think I'm going to add myself as an owner. Okay, there we go. Very good. I'm going to click finish. Now, I do have all these tables created in a SharePoint site, but I just realized being here that I created in a different tenant. So that's going to be problematic. So I'm going to go over to the site contents, and it's actually good that you'll see how I create tables here. Now, do realize I will be going fast. So this might be a point where you might want to slow me down if you want to see exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to try to stick with singular names for database tables or these SharePoint lists here. So one row would be referred to as a ticket, and we'll click create. Okay, and then I'm going to go back over to site and at first I'm just going to create all four database tables. Okay, ticket status. No, let's see here. Site contents.
I want to
By
point
the
out that you don't put spaces in your names, which is really important in SharePoint because it
it
doesn't have that
is.
%20 for the spaces. So it's really good practice not to add those spaces.
Yeah, especially with SharePoint, because once you create either a SharePoint list or even the columns, notoriously in the past. Now, I don't know if they've updated it, and somebody told me, well, they actually changed it so it's updated. Um, I I always make sure, yeah, there's no spaces. Now within Power, it's a little bit of a selfish reason because when you're over in Power Apps and the table name or the column name has any spaces or any weird characters in there, um, there'll be these single quotes before and after. I'll try to put that in there. And if you don't put them in there with those single quotes, so you have additional work every single time that data source is referenced, you have to put these single quotes all over the place. And I don't like that. It makes the code look a bit uglier to me. Now in Dataverse, if you're doing any type of model driven applications, then there are some rules that of mine, my in my opinion of my rules that you might want to stray from with model driven because it's a no code environment. So everything is based on the model. So the table names, if you want them to see the title of a screen or something, you probably want to have those spaces in there to make it more human readable. But as far as in SharePoint, I don't want the users to be able to see the data sources, the table names and the column names. Now they're going to have access to it because it does pass through security. So whenever somebody uses my Power Apps app, and we're talking to a data source like SharePoint, it's going to pass those credentials over to SharePoint. So when they add or edit a record, it's going to have their name and not my name there. And I want to keep up to date here on these comments. So that's the benefit of joining us live, guys, is that you guys can ask me questions live. And as long as it's relevant, I will try to answer those. So I've been creating this app for the university where I work using SharePoint. However, this data model and Microsoft's base template structure falls short in real life. Yeah, it really does. So we're going to be going over those points and what I recommend instead of what they have there. And Patrick asks, why do you prefer SharePoint list as a data source instead of Dataverse? I prefer it because of you guys. So 70, I did a poll out on my YouTube channel. So if you go over to community tab, and it might have been like 2 years ago or so, and I put a poll out there. I'm like, hey guys, what data source do you reach for first? What's your primary data source that you use for all your applications? Most of the time. And it was all SharePoint. Not all, 70% or a little over 70%. And the main reason is licensing. So let's say you work for a large organization that has 10,000 employees and you write a really awesome Power Apps application and they want to deploy it as an enterprise application and everybody's going to be using it. Well, guess what? Everybody's going to need a premium license if you're using Dataverse. Now, you do have an exception with Dataverse for Teams. It comes with some limitations. And I've seen some headaches trying to write an app within the Dataverse for Teams environment, and I know that the perspective is shared with Matthew Devaney and Shane Young. I've seen that they did a video where they talked about a few things related to Power Apps, and that's one of the things that came up. They're like, "Yeah, we don't like that. We don't like that Dataverse for Teams. It comes with too many limitations that restrict us." So I never recommend it. Um, I always recommend dealing straight with Power Apps to a real data source as much as you can. And I mean, I would prefer that everybody, and if I work on a project, I always want to use either Dataverse or SQL Server. Now, Dataverse, they're creating so many features around Dataverse that it really is the best data source to use for Power Apps because it was designed and created for the Power Platform. There's less layers of APIs to go through. There's less API calls to go through, and you have a lot more leeway before you hit a throttling limit. Uh, more so than what you would have with SQL Server. Um, but SQL Server has some really cool upsides. Most of which is you can generate all your tables with running a script like you did, Virginia. That wasn't that sort of cool when you hit execute and just
Very
brrr, done.
the
No
best.
errors. It's done. I mean, you could add 50 tables there and it just boom, it's
Yeah.
done. Um, and one was talking, I think, about this SharePoint thing because the university is public. Yeah, so that's it. It's the licensing. That's why people go with SharePoint. And guys, if you don't know this, you can create your own Microsoft tenant for something as cheap as like $6 or $7 a month, and that's even if you go month to month. I think it's actually cheaper. It might be $5 or $6 if you do an annual agreement with Microsoft. You have your own tenant for that amount of money. So you get your own, you use your Outlook and everything. Now, that's all web based. Now you spring for a little more money, you get to download the different Office components and stuff. But yeah, you get one. I think it's either 1 or 2 terabytes of OneDrive space. It might be one, but for $5 or $6, hey, that's not bad.
Mhm.
And you get all the SharePoint. You run your own tenant. When I found that out, I'm like, oh yeah. Now there's a reason why I stuck around on the screen. And the reason why is I wanted to let everybody know because I don't get to talk about this enough, which is, do you guys know that you can modify the SharePoint screens with Power Apps? If you want your mind, if you've never heard of this, it will blow your mind. If you go in here, integrate, and go in here and customize the forms and see what comes up. You can actually modify that. Okay.
Okay.
So I'll encourage you guys to do that. So I'm going to go back over to site contents and look at what we have. We have ticket and ticket status. Now, I don't know why. If you look at these icons here, ticket and ticket status, they have different icons, and that sort of bothers me. Now, the yellow type of icon, typically I've seen that. Now, it looks like my video has froze up on me and made me look weird there for a moment or two. Let me see if my video comes back. Maybe.
I hadn't noticed.
You didn't notice?
No, I was looking at the screen. So
Yeah, sometimes okay. Well, maybe I'll just turn it off and give it a break for a minute or two. But this icon here, a lot of times is, in my mind, associated with the on-premise old type of lists. So in case anybody's watching or listening and they know, like, I just created these two fresh, like, why is one icon look different? Stuff like that really bothers me when things are inconsistent. Um, I think I might try something here. We'll just turn off my camera and turn it back on. That's typically how you handle problems in IT. You just turn it off and turn it back
reboot.
on. All right. If you guys would bear with me, I'm trying to get to the bottom of this. And I think my capture card is a little warm. And maybe that's what's going on. Okay. Well, don't mean to make you guys wait here. Let's see if I can try just one more thing. And may or may not work. There we go. And let me go and adjust a thing or two here. And hopefully that works. Oh, I'm back. Look at that. All right. So I am going to create these other SharePoint lists quickly here. So we have the status. Let's create departments. And again, I create the database names as singular. And it's something that DBAs tend to like to see, I found. So you might impress your DBA, perhaps, if you go off and find their recommended best practices for how they like things created in the organization. I'm going to go ahead and say department tech. Okay. So now we have all the tables created. Now, while we're looking at this, I'm going to go back over to this tab here. I'm going to pull that tab off here to the side. And what I want to show you guys is I do have Windows Explorer open. So if you guys are following along, open up your OneDrive. Okay, so that's where I'm going right now. And what you'll find is there's a folder called Power Apps. And if it wasn't there, it created it for you. And then within that folder, you'll see a folder called Templates. And I think I'm going to move some things around and show you guys what I have here. Okay, so here's all my templates. Look at that. And they like to use GUIDs. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort this by modified. And I was expecting it to be right there at the top. Let's see what's going on here. You know what? I'm looking at the wrong tenant. So I've got all my OneDrive set up with the three tenants I manage here. So I was actually in the wrong OneDrive.
For
I'll go in.
clarification, Darren, at what point does it create that folder for you? The moment that you create the Power App?
Yeah. So if you're using this one, there's a bar at the top and it says make this your own app. That's
Yeah.
what it's doing. So as soon
Okay.
as you do that, a few moments after that, and it'll actually ask you like, hey, what connector do you want to use? And if you ever see OneDrive and then you see OneDrive for business, always pick the one for business
Okay.
because most of the time that's what you want, number one. And you never want to get a personal OneDrive or a personal Outlook account confused with a work account. Microsoft treats those things very differently. You'll see work or school, they'll say work or school account or a personal. And typically you always want to pick that work or school account. Not only that, but if you look at, well, I can't really show you that from that window, but whenever you create browser profiles, I always recommend people, if you're doing Microsoft development, like in Power Apps here, use Edge because it works really well off of Microsoft accounts. And you'll go in there, and I always recommend that you guys create profiles. Uh, because Virginia, you're part of the accelerator program, so you've got your own environment within the tenant for the accelerator students. You've got your own Dataverse database and everything. And what I recommend that people do is create a separate profile to keep all your bookmarks and your cookies and your passwords all separate, and they can synchronize based on those profiles. And I believe I actually have a YouTube video. If you guys do a search for my name and browser profile, I think I actually have a video, a little 5-minute video showing you how to do that. So I definitely don't want to go into that now, but I do recommend taking advantage of that, and it separates everything between the tenants. Sometimes, like with me that you've seen here a few minutes ago, I can get mixed up in what I have and what tenants. But I'm going to go into that folder that I mentioned. Power Apps, there it is. I do see it now. And I'm going to go into that subfolder templates. Okay, here we go. Now it's giving me an error up here in the top bar because I think I have too many files for the OneDrive. But I'm hoping that it created this for me. Look at that, service desk. Okay, what are we going to find in this folder? We're going to see a little bitty Excel spreadsheet here, 30 kilobytes. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this off screen and open up Excel, make sure I'm signed into the right tenant, then I'll bring it back for you guys. Okay. And I'm not signed into the right tenant, so I need to change that. Okay. I think I'm good there now. I'm going to bring this over, and this is what opened up. Now, if you look at the very bottom, and I might have to move this around so you guys can see it all. I'm going to move this scroll bar and see what we have down here. Okay, see all these tabs? This is how you do separate database. If you ever use Excel as a database, each tab could be used as a separate database table, if you would call it that. But you see we have tickets, ticket types, filter by, drop down status, all these different things. Now, I analyzed these requirements and the data here. No, I don't want to see that. I'm going to maximize this. Okay, so here's all the different fields that we need to create. And you'll see a lot of these in my ERD diagram. Ticket types. Why would you need a table for new tickets? Well, that would just be a column in the tickets table. So I my personal opinion, the data really wasn't set up properly, but hey, I'm not going to complain. Probably somebody in the community, like myself, an MVP, created that template and submitted it to Microsoft, and they released it to the community. So I'm not going to complain about that. And so this is something else I didn't include in my ERD diagram, but you know what? It bears sort of pointing out because I want to teach you guys good programming practices and good database design. Now this is drop down status. And that is something, if it's something like that, I don't, and I'll show you how I handle these. So if something like this, you might, oh, well, create that. Well, a lot of times people are tempted to create a choice column out of this. I say no. If you absolutely want to do a choice column, just create a different database table or SharePoint list, and just put the values in there, because now it's flexible. You can add them dynamically, and it's like, well, there's only ever going to be three statuses. Oh, really? A ticket can't be canceled. I mean, I could sit here and think of a dozen different statuses for a ticket just off the top of my head, but um, you can simplify this quite a bit within Power Apps, and I'm going to show you that here tonight. So priority types. Okay, so I'm just showing you guys all the different. We're showing you guys the schema of this original one. Okay, so here's the technicians. We have first and the first name, and then the first letter of their last name. And that is not a good unique identifier for staff members. Okay. Also, if you look at these, well, what departments are they a part of? You know, now they do have something called areas. Yeah. So they call it account names inside the app. They're called areas. Guys, they're departments. Like, you know, so I'm going to point out some of the things I don't agree with and maybe make light of them, just to sort of drive home the point of how you might want to design this differently. But whoever created this, if you're I'm not going to presume that they're watching me or anything, but if by chance, they do, hey man, or gal, I appreciate what you did. And if you guys looked at my first Power Apps, you guys would probably all laugh, and I can guarantee it was horrendous. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to go back over here. So we've created these four tables, and those are the only four tables there. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I need to make sure that I've got all the columns in there. So I'm going to do this quickly as we're talking about this application. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into site contents, and I'm going to go into this ticket. Now ticket's the only one that's got this weird icon that still baffles me a bit. Okay, so yes, you're absolutely right, Virginia. Whenever you create these columns, make sure you spell them right. You don't misspell anything. So you go back and try. You know what? I'm going to break the rule right now. Let's create a bunch of stuff like this. Okay, it's got a bunch of spaces. Nobody would use that for a field name, right? I'm going to click OK. Now, so here's the field. Now, I'm hovering over that field here in the settings for the SharePoint list. Do you guys see everything at the bottom of my screen?
Yes.
There is a URL at the very bottom of my browser. In fact, I'm going to do the zoom it tool. And look at this. Now, my taskbar wants to pop up, which I don't want it to. Do you see that at the very end? We have
Yes.
underscore x0020 underscore that represents a space. So you don't want that, in my opinion. Now, that doesn't mean you'll have to do that within Power Apps, but let's say we go back in here and say, oh no, this is a good field. This is what I wanted to name it. And you click OK. Now, this is something else that sort of bothers me for consistency's sake. And what you'll see is the title, that's a link, and that's gray. The modified, all these are gray. But this one right here is teal. But look at the thing down below. The field name really hasn't changed.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did you know that SharePoint, all of its data is stored within SQL Server? Now, I wouldn't go so far to say that each list is a database table, and it very well might be. I don't know that for certain. I do know it for certain within the realm of Dataverse. But for all we know, it created that field in there in the database with that name. If you ever rename it, it allows you to rename it. But over in Power Apps in the past, you've always had to use the old name to get at it, which has been.
Mm-hmm.
So if I ever do something like that, what I do, hopefully I catch it before I put any data in there, is I delete it and get rid of that.
And same for Power Automate, just to add that to the comment that you just made. Not only Power
Yeah.
Apps, it Power Automate, that's the name at the end that it will look for if you want to bring
Wow.
in that column into Power Automate.
Okay. That's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just be creating these. So we already do have a title, and I'm going to add a description. Now, let me ask you a question, Virginia. When you created your tables within SQL Server, did you did you create title? Did you create name? What did you create for, like, let's say, something was used as a drop down. What would you have there? Did you create any special field for that?
Well, like for departments, I'm not sure if I'm understanding your question correctly, but for
Hmm.
for departments, I have like 9 different departments,
Mm.
and it's just gonna be for like when I ask in the ticket, what department do you need help from?
Hmm.
It'll be a drop down, and they'll select one of those 9 that I have in my database tables.
So the name of the department. What did you call that name?
One of them is called oh, the actual column name, just department,
Oh, okay.
just department. That's it.
Yeah, very good. And that's completely fine. I could see myself doing that as well. Now, within SharePoint, it's always going to create an ID and a title. So what I do is I sort of use that title for that type of a purpose. So in department, I'll put the department name there. For text, I might put that person's full name there. Now I have an email which is unique. So we might have two John Smiths, but the two John Smiths won't have the same email address. So a lot of times that's why I use it that way. In ticket status, I use the title over there for the actual name of the status. And if you look at our Excel spreadsheet for ticket status, which is here, that's what I would put over in the title. Now, if you're using Dataverse, I just like with SharePoint, I allow it to create it just as it likes to. But in Dataverse, it likes to create a field called name, and I allow it to do that. Now, you could always change it, but I don't like to change it because I like
That's
things
what I did with mine.
consistent.
Mine is name. Mine is name.
It is name. Okay, very
My
good.
my table name is department, but for
Hmm.
the actual drop down of those 9 department names, it's the field is called name.
Okay,
Yeah.
I like that.
Hmm.
And for every table, you know that you've got an ID. Typically, it's going to be an integer, and then every table is going to have a name. In your case, in Dataverse, is be named. So I never have to guess about that. Okay. Now, something I do want to point out with Dataverse, if you guys are working with Dataverse, realize that it calls that name field, which you can rename. It calls it the primary column. It doesn't call it the primary index. It calls it the primary column. And the primary column is used as we just described it a few minutes ago. Like if you had a drop down or something and you wanted something in there so they know they can identify what row, that's what should go in there. That's what's used. For every database table that's created, it's not really obvious, but it should be because primary keys are very important. What Dataverse does is it creates what's called a unique identifier. If you've ever heard of GUID, GUID, globally unique identifier, it looks like a long string of a bunch of hexadecimal numbers. Looks a little ugly, a lot uglier than, let's say, an integer, but it creates that column. What does it call it? Well, it calls it the exact same name that you created your table. So if I created a table called ticket in Dataverse, there's going to be a column in there called ticket. You can't change it. And from what I've seen, it's the only unique identifier type of field that you can have. Like you only have one of them in the table. If somebody knows how to do that, let me know. But it creates a unique identifier or a GUID as a primary key for that table, the same name as the table. So just thought I'd let you guys know that. All right. So I am. Did you have anything to add to that?
No.
Okay. I didn't know if you were about to say something.
Oh
Um,
no.
let's see here. Where did this needs to go up here? I need to create all my fields. You're already ahead of me. You got all your tables created here. Owner name, it's going to be single line of text. Now, what I do in my applications that I didn't normally do as a full stack .NET developer is what I'll do in my database design is I'll denormalize, which is really frowned upon by your DBAs, to denormalize data, but it allows it to be much more easily accessed, especially if I'm working with something like SharePoint, where you got to watch out for delegation issues with SharePoint much more than what you would with Dataverse or SQL Server. I'll put things in here that I might have to reference often, you know. So let's say we've got an owner name and then we have their owner email. Well, if I've got a gallery and I need to display a lot of these fields here, you should never put a lookup or a filter inside of a gallery template. What's a gallery template? The gallery template is that first record that gets repeated over and over again. So let's say you got 100 records in a gallery, and inside of a little label, you got a little lookup. It's doing 100 lookups. It renders 100 records at a time within the gallery. So, talk about a few minutes ago. I talked about hitting the your limit with API calls. If you write, and this is especially pertinent to you, Virginia, um, with SQL Server, you can only have so many calls to SQL Server either per second or per 20 seconds, something like that. And if you write your application in an inefficient way, when that throttle is hit, everybody will be sitting there and waiting for their turn. And in some cases, they could be waiting for 20, 30 minutes, which you talk about upset users. They just won't even use your app at that point. So it's really important that you write your applications well and with good programming practices so that you don't do things like put lookups in labels within a gallery that's repeated over and over. So within software development, there's this school of thought, which is you want to make things the most efficient way possible. And then there's like an opposing side who's like, oh, well, who cares? Computers or servers these days, they got gigs or a terabyte's worth of memory and storage. Space doesn't matter. But when it comes to loops or iterations, so a gallery is repeating a bunch of controls or a bunch of lookup or filter statements. Why would you use a filter statement within a gallery? Well, if you wanted to do count rows or do some type of an aggregate function, sum, count if, all this other type of stuff, you could put that into a label, and then you're hitting the database so many different ways, and you're just using up all of your API usage, and it could be a disaster, to be honest, if you don't design things properly. So that's why I spend so much time on ERD diagrams, and I've got a lot of videos on, you know, before you open up Power Apps, you should have gathered the requirements. You should define the application, gather requirements, analyzed the requirement, all the information that you've gathered, and then make a design. And if you're looking to become a freelancer, you have to do all that stuff before you give a solid solid estimate for time and cost. There's no way you can give an estimate on time and cost if you haven't designed the system, because if you don't know that it's gonna be a 20 screen application and what they're presenting, and you haven't really dug into the requirements, they might say, "Oh, it's going to be a single page application." A lot of non-technical users will say, "Oh, it's a simple app. You just do this and this. I just have it in an Excel document." And if you guys have seen my checklist inspection app, that was exactly what the client said. And I did the application for $95. And I did that on purpose so I'd have a portfolio piece. But they said, yeah, it's just going to be a one screen application because it's just a one tab spreadsheet. It ended up having, I believe, 19 screens and quite a few tables. A lot more than just one. I can tell you that. Probably around 8 or 10 tables for that. So it goes to show you that that type of stuff is really important. It can really, you could end up in a disaster. If you're a freelancer, you might be on the line for that. If you're an employee, they'll just keep, you just continue to get a paycheck until you get it right. If you're a freelancer, like, no, you told me it was going to cost 5,000. That's all I'm going to give you. And you're sitting there working for a year. $5,000 might sound like a lot of money, but that's not a good annual salary, right?
Nope.
Yeah, you can really lose your shirt if you don't do things right from the beginning. So, like always, I digress. I need to create all these columns here. So we do have description, owner name, and we have owner email. So any other lessons learned that you've come across so far, either being an accelerator or any of your Power Apps projects?
Not yet. This is my first one, so I'm
Okay.
it's too early for me to be really providing any that kind of feedback at this time.
Yeah. Well,
Only
you
thing I
you.
can say, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say you picked a doozy for a first project using SQL Server. You're not even using SharePoint for your first project.
Well, because I don't want to be running across that I'm out of space or I'm out of data. It's
Yeah.
not reliable, anything
Yeah.
like that. So I just want to make sure I put it somewhere safe and it can keep growing as much as it needs to, and that won't be an issue. Because that's a
I like
constant.
that.
You create just something small, thinking it's gonna stay small, and then it just blows up, and it can't. The database is not big enough to sustain all that data.
Yeah. Um, what I don't like about Dataverse is, um, and I'm sure there's proper ways of going that Microsoft would outline, but what if you have different departments? There's always this question within governance. Does everybody share an environment? Okay, well, first of all, you need a development environment, a test environment, and a product. At least have three, and don't make it part of your default. Um, I need to make sure that I'm continuing to create these columns here. Otherwise, I'll never get it done. Assigned to email. Um, and there are some groups, some departments, and teams that need to access the same data.
Mhm.
Well, there's a one-to-one relationship between Dataverse databases and environments. So, well, you can create teams, and you've got these things that you can create within the Power Platform. But what I like about SQL Server, it's very easy to make that cross tenant, and you can make tenants talk to each other. You can. But with SQL Server, it's very easy to talk cross tenants and across environments, and that's one of the big reasons I like it as data, especially in Azure and not on premise. Assigned to email. You have a date closed. How are we doing on time? I think, yeah, I'm talking too much. I need to hurry up. Date closed. And oh, this needs to be a date time. Okay. And I stick a lot with the defaults that are here. Date closed, and we'll say internal comments. Okay. I almost put a space in there. Internal comments. Now, this I'm going to make as multiple lines of text. Now, this particular type, if you've got a memo or comments or that type of thing, you want to say multiple lines of text because single line of text is only 255 characters. Um, what you want to make sure is you go down here and you make sure it says plain text. Okay. You do the enhanced rich text and you're thinking, oh, I might want to have them, we have a rich text editor within Power, so you can still use it with plain text, but it's going to be throwing in a bunch of div tags and stuff that you may not want in there. And I have found you have less hassle going with plain text. I'll click OK. And Jad says, don't use lookups in gallery. Yeah. I I've just understood why of my app's so slow and loading 100 lines. Yeah. Yeah. That can what I like to do is if I have the need to do a lookup or something like that, what I'll do is I'll find out all the data that gallery needs, and I'll go prefetch that, put it into a collection variable, and then I'm doing lookups or filters on that collection, and it's there in the memory, and it's lightning fast. It doesn't have any, repercussions on the amount of API calls and stuff. So that's actually a good thing. Now we've finished the first table, so that's the biggest one. So these others are going to be really quick and easy. So I'm going to go to site contents. I'm going to create. Nope, all the lists are created. Ticket status, boom, go in here. We have ID. Now, a lot of times I do like to go in here, show hide columns. I like to add the ID, put at the top, because that is the primary key. I like to see that. And then I also want to add a description. Now, you just saw a place where I was adding all the columns. Well, this is another way that you can add columns. And here, so if I click multiple lines of text, because it's going to be a description, and I want them to be able to paste 20 lines of a Word document in there if they want to. Um, so I'll type in description. Okay, multiple lines of text. Now, what I like about creating this particular type of column this way is that if you look here, it doesn't try to put in rich text. Okay, so I sort of like that. But what I don't like about it, you see that little thing that popped up there? Used to be that thing would stay there for like 10 seconds. It would drive me nuts. But looks like they've improved that. Very happy about that. All right, so department, we're going to go in here. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make sure our ID column is up there. I want to see that. And then we do have a description for this column as well. Multiple lines of text, very good. And then we need to go to the text. Same thing, show the ID. And we will add an email. And I use a single line of text for that email. Very good. Now we do have all four of our data sources set up. Now within SharePoint, I don't recommend using lookups. It's a complex type and will give you some delegation problem. Not only does it make your app slower, it can make your app slower, but you have delegation problems. And that's a big problem. And by the way, guys, this Friday, we have a workshop this Friday afternoon from 1 p.m. EST to 5 p.m. The whole workshop will be about delegation. I think, Virginia, you actually brought this up to me. You're like, hey, I heard that Power Apps can handle 2,000 records. And I'm like, well, a lot of people get, concerned when they hear about it. Only 2,000 records. What? I've got millions of records, especially if you're working with something like SQL Server. And the question is, do you need to show the user 2,000 records on the screen all at once? And typically the answer is no. And if the answer is yes, well, Power Apps isn't the right tool for your project. That's what you need. You might as well write something in C# or Python or C++,
Yeah.
What you need to do is query exactly what you need with delegation. And you'll get delegation warnings on something simple as, let's say, ticket status. Well, we might only have 5 statuses out there. You're never going to have it. So if you do something, let's say count rows with SharePoint, let's say, you're going to have a delegation problem. You get up above the 2,000. And that 2,000, that is the max. You could lower it if you want. Okay, so here's my fresh, pristine app. Now, what do you do, Virginia, whenever you create a new app? What's the first thing that you should do?
Connect your data.
Well, that's at the top of the list. That's at the top of the list.
Save.
Yeah.
Name your app and save.
So no, I don't know why it did that to me. That's sort of cool. Like if I had another app out there with the same name, I could replace it if I wanted to. That's sort of cool. What I want to do, a phrase I always say is save early and save often. And so and I'll explain that here in a second. We'll call this, I call my SharePoint site, Service Desk App Rewrite. I sort of like that. So typically I do create a SharePoint. If I'm going to use a SharePoint as a data source, I create a SharePoint site typically for each app. Now, if it deals with a lot of related data, then I try to share that, but I'm going to use that for the name. So now I've saved early and save often. So if I go over here to settings, what do we have? Okay, there, our name just popped up. That's good. What you'll notice if you scroll down here on the general tab of the settings, save changes every 2 minutes. This is a browser level setting and it's on by default. Okay, so good. So once you're aware of that and you create a new app, you're thinking, oh yeah, it's saving every 2 minutes. I'm fine. And you could spend 2 or 3 hours, go off to lunch, go to sleep, come back, and you never manually saved for the first time. You have lost all your work because after a few hours, Power Apps is going to say, hey, you've been away for a while. Do you want to continue editing? And then it's going to laugh in your face when you say yes, because it won't allow you to go back in there. It's going to refresh the whole thing, and then you won't be able to find your app. So that autosave every 2 minutes does not start until you save it for the first time. And something else I came across, let's make a change to our application, and I go over here to save. Now, there's save with version notes, and sometimes that's disabled. And what I saw was if I went in here and I turned this off, then I was able to save it with comments. So things change almost day to day within Power Apps. So sometimes you never know what to expect. Like right now, I mean, I can go in and I can view my YAML code, not XAML, YAML code. So that's pretty cool. By the way, if you guys don't know what that is, I think we did a whole live stream on it last week about this YAML. We can look at the code. It's an awesome feature. I love it. Let's go back into the settings, okay? And we'll continue to scroll down, and we'll come across this data row limit. Now, if you don't need it to be 2000, just leave it at 500, because if there's tons of data and you're not really, you should. I'm gonna say something that might sound weird. You never want to refer to your data source just by its name. Almost always you want to have a filter function. Now, if we're talking about a table like ticket status that only has 5 records in it, you're gonna be fine. But tickets, if you got a screen in your Power Apps application, and do you really need to load up all 2000? Like maybe it's the first month you've been using it. Maybe you don't have 2000. You're like, okay, I'll just list off all the tickets. But after a few years, you probably have more than 2000 tickets. I'm like, oh, well, let's delete all that, that history data. It's like, why would you do that? Because you might have some legal obligation to keep on like compliance to have records of all those to keep those records on file, for whatever purpose. And I don't like to delete unless it's test data. Test data, yeah, I'll delete test data any day. But if it's real data, data is the lifeblood of any business,
Mhm.
and it's so important. So I don't like to delete data, but so if there's a lot of data, even in a SharePoint list, people start to get a little antsy when you get over the 5,000 record limit within a SharePoint list, which really isn't that big of a problem. But you always want to be filtering just based precisely on what you want. So we're going to be delving into that in the workshop on Friday afternoon and talk about all these things, everything related to delegation. We're going to do a deep dive into that and have some practical labs and exercises associated. So we have that. So I at least wanted to talk about that. Okay. And you said the next thing we might want to do is pull in our data sources. I think that's a great idea. I'm going to click on add data. Now, of course, we're going to see all of our Dataverse stuff here at the top. Let's go to connectors. And usually I see it at somewhere here. Oh, there's SQL Server.
Mhm.
Um, there we go. Now, if you ever see multiples like this, I don't know why it does. I just click on the first one every time.
Okay.
Now, I'm going to go find my SharePoint site here, and I'm going to find this little square. Okay. And when you click on the square, what's going to happen is you're going to get the root of your site, the URL to the root of your site, the home page. And I'll go back over here and I'm going to paste in the URL. Actually, it's up here is where I should have put it. Connect. And there's department tech, ticket, and ticket status. Those 4 tables. I'm going to click connect. Okay, there we go. We have our tables. Very nice. Um, okay, so let's look. This is awesome because maybe it's not so awesome. I was going to say, that little feature that I was just talking about is so great. I could copy and paste code in screens and controls from one app to another by copying the code. Now, if I go over, what you'll notice in this old crusty Service Desk application, do you notice there's no data
Yeah.
tab over here? Increíble. Yeah, you might want to have your your data. Like where's the data? Okay, well, you click on a gallery. This used to be a big clunky purple bar for about a month, and now they've made it a little bit more elegant, which is nice. If you go into data, okay, now you can see all the data. Okay, so these are all the tabs within our Excel document. Also, if you guys ever run into this, now I don't recommend using Excel or a spreadsheet in general as a data source. But what I want to point out, because it's really important, if you're ever trying to read or write data to an Excel document, you notice that these things are what's called tables within Excel.
Mhm.
So see format as table, you
Mhm.
format it as a table there. And let's make sure I'm on top of things here. I do see one or two comments I need to come back to. These need to be tables, okay? And what you're going to do is once you format something as a table, you're going to have a tab at the top called a table design, and then you go over here, case status. That is what you can refer to it as in Power Apps, okay? So if you don't give it a good name, it's going to say table one, and you're going to be like, what's table one? So thankfully, these were created properly. Okay, at least we have that. But you have no data tab. So what I was hoping for, this screen here, that I could just copy it all, but you notice that it's not there. Okay, now what I can do within settings, you can go down here to support and look at this authoring version. Okay, 5419 are the last four numbers, 5419. So if I go in here, 5419, so they're the same version. So why can't I tie into that? Why can't I get the YAML code out of there? Copy. Ooh, maybe I can do it. Now, it doesn't allow me to do it for the table. It allows me to do it for a control. That's very interesting. Okay. Okay. So, Virginia, do you like this purple theme that they have in here?
I do.
You going to be using that? Okay. So
Yes.
let's carry over that purple theme. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find out the hexadecimal. Do you happen to know the hexadecimal value of this? I could probably
I
find that
can
out
grab
right
it for you.
here.
Let me see if I can get to the right one. Hold on. Home page.
There is, okay, this is a label that I just clicked on up here. And then if I go over here, I'm hoping that it's going to show me the hexadecimal value, and I'm not seeing it. So this label is probably on top of something. I'm going to click on that. Oh, and that's something else. Okay. So here's a rectangle in the background. This hexadecimal value, if we look at the fill on this, now last week's workshop was about modernizing any app. So if you have an old crusty app, how do you like polish it up and bring it into 2024? That's what that workshop was about. And if you're part of my workshop school environment, you'll have access to all the previous ones. Oh, very good. So it's 631A2, as you just provided in the private chat. Very good. And here's the RGBA value. Okay. So I do like hexadecimal values better than the RGBA. So I'm going to copy what you just provided. I'm going to go over to our fresh, new, pristine app here. And I'm going to create a constant over in the app dot form. What is a constant? It's sort of like a variable, but it just doesn't change. FX, and I'm going to call this primary color. I'm going to define it. Well, I'm going to use the function color value, and we're going to give it a pound sign there since it has hexadecimal, and I need to put a semicolon there. Okay, so app.formulas. Now, what we do have, are you using any of the modern controls for this app?
I don't think so. It's the classic.
Okay. Now, because the modern controls are becoming so popular, they're not as nice and tried and true as the classic ones. I'm going to attempt to use as many modern controls as I can because I know that people are going to be more interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I do before I move to modern, I always pick this light theme here, which is a gray, just in case there's anything left over from the classic theme, which I had to work with before. I think now there's a little prompt and it will bring everything over. But if you have to pick a color, there are three colors that will go with any color palette. It's white, black, shades of gray. So that's why I go with this particular theme, because if you start bringing over controls, you notice everything's gray. I'm going to go into settings, and I'm going to go down, and I am going to find modern controls and themes. Okay, and I'm gonna make use of this. Okay, I'm going to turn that on. Then I'll click close. And now it's going to apply that modern theming to any classic stuff I have. I don't have any, but I'm going to go ahead and click apply. Okay. So it's going to be happy. Very good. Now I'm going to go over to these modern themes, and we do have a purple theme here, but I want to use a lot of times you're going to have to create your own theme. If you're going to rely on this. Now, for my template, I do not rely on any theming because my theming system is like, I would say it's like 10 times better because you got so many more features than because you can only pick one color to base your theme on here. And this is the new feature. Like what about accent colors and complementary colors? Perhaps you don't want to go. Now you do have this torsion and it will change I guess the hue or the different shades there. And you have vibrancy. Okay, you can mess with those. Oh, look at this. So I can paste in. I'm going to take that out and hopefully it's going to allow me to paste. There we go. There's our purple color. Okay. So we're going to call this my purple. And I'm going to go with the defaults. And if we look at this is what our stuff is going to look like. Okay. Now that's not quite the Power Apps purple, but it's the purple that we wanted to go with. So I'm going to click Create. Now, something I've noticed, now we can modify a theme that we create, but we can't modify the default ones. Isn't that interesting? Now, what I could do, and hopefully they open that up so we can duplicate a theme and then tweak it from there. So I'd almost want to duplicate this. And what I found is I used a color eyedropper to find out the exact hexadecimal of this color, and I create a new theme based on that. And then these 4 colors are different. And I'm like, why? Why? So anyway, if you guys follow me on the template that I build for all my applications, I do something completely different than this. I think it's a better way of doing things. So I'm gonna do this just to make it easier on myself. And I don't necessarily have to rely on, like I started over here in the app formulas and created this as a concept. If I ever wanted to get at the hexadecimal programmatically, I could get at it. In this case, I would probably a better way of going about this would be say fx my theme or just theme, and then we could create a record. If you ever see curly braces within Power Apps, think record. Okay, what does record have? A record has fields. So I might say something. Well, let's sort of follow the consistent thing that they have here. Okay, so I'm going to bring over, and look, even this text is now, was that always, maybe it was purple because Power Apps is purple, but you notice this is purple down here. I find that sort of cool, I guess. I'm going to type in here rectangle. I'm going to bring that over. Okay, and it's pulling that in from there. Now look at this, app.theme.colors.primary. Okay, let's look at this. We've got all kinds of shades of that primary color, but we have the primary color, and these shades, the darker and lighter, is based on the primary. So I'm gonna try to stick with what they have here, and I'm gonna call it primary if I want to do that. Okay, I'm gonna go over to app formulas. I'm gonna open this up, and I'm gonna call it primary. Now, what I could do is I could just refer to this FX color and define it like that if I wanted to. Or I could just get rid of this altogether and just simplify it a little bit. Now in my template, I have multiple themes. So a user could pick out their own color theme if you as the Power Apps creator allows it. So here we go. We have a theme. So now I can reference the theme.primary, and it's going to give me the same exact color. But what's nice about just leaving this alone is if I start bringing over things like buttons, it's going to tie into that theming that we set up there. So I'm going to allow that. If there's always a default, I'm always going to be going against the grain, going against the current. Sometimes I just allow it to and just sort of go along with it. Okay. So we have this. Now we need a bar up here. And how do they do this? Well, back then we didn't have containers. We should probably create a container up here. And normally I would create my own header, but guess what we have now with these modern controls? We have a header component. Okay, this is sort of nice. There we go. Boom, that's done. Making good progress here. Now I'm going to create another screen. And I'm going to show you something sort of cool about this header. And then I'll bring over a header here. I don't even try to go in here and look for what I'm looking because I can never pick the right category. I just start typing. Now look at what it does for us. It automatically is referencing the name of the screen there. So that's sort of nice. We know where we're at. Okay. So we have a header. What else do we want? Do we want the name of the application here in the header? I guess we could do that. So you could add that if you want. And I'm just going to try to keep things as simple as possible. Now, we have it's almost like a little dashboard. We can see what's going on here. Okay. And if you look at my thumbnail, whenever I created this app on my own, I created something that I thought looked a little better than this, which are circles. You could do something like that. I think I am going to add a container since I didn't get to use the container a few moments ago because I went with the header. I'm going to create my little dashboard pane here. Okay. And there we go. Now, what's cool about a container now is that we can give it like a little drop shadow. Sort of looks nice. Okay. So we'll create our dashboard there. And going back over, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got 5 different things going on here. And what I might want to do, we can make that dynamic. I can't get too fancy here because we'll run out of time. So you know what I might do? I wonder what it's going to show me here. So here we have a group, and then we have 2 labels inside of it. Now I copied it. Now if I go over here and I try to paste the code, what's going to happen? Okay, I'm going to allow a paste. Sure. Look at that. It brought it over. Isn't that cool? Now it
Yes.
doesn't have any data showing up there. What were you saying?
Yes, it's cool.
All right, we're doing account rows on the tickets and it's complaining about it. Okay, well, do we have some in here? Yeah, it's called ticket, not tickets. Okay, we got 0 tickets. We're ahead of the ball game. So I really don't like groups though. Really don't like it. So what we can do from here, we can ungroup it. And I got rid of it. I'm happy. So what I could do is I can click on this group. I'm going to hold down Control on my keyboard and see if I can select more than one group, and I can, which is nice. I'm going to click on one of these. I'm going to say copy. Boom, copy code. See how awesome this is? Paste. Look at that. And probably all those little measle errors are caused because I'm trying it to make it go in the middle and it won't. Because we reference tickets. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the little magnifier and I'm going to go over here to replace. I'm going to type in tickets and then I'm going to replace that with a ticket. Okay, I'm going to refresh and we have 6 to replace. I'm going to go ahead and click replace all. There we go. We're almost operational here. Okay, I'm going to get rid of all these groups again because I hate groups. Ungroup. Now, it would have been nice if these labels were named well, but they're not. And the question is, were they named well over here? And they were not. Okay, so maybe if they were named well, that would have carried over, which would be nice to know. Okay, so we've got all these things here. Now, I'm going to show you another one of my tricks, which is let's select them all these controls here, and you can right click. And what I was going to show you is we can align the tops, but there's one little problem with that is that we need to select the top ones first. And they're all aligned to the top, but I'm going to click on anyway. And I'm going to move this over. I didn't like that. Okay. So the height of this, which is just too much. This is too much height, to be honest. This is 150. Let's change the height of all these to 100. Okay, we want our app to be a little more elegant. Okay. I want to get this label, pull that down to be aligned with that. And I should have copied them, all of them at the same time, but that's okay. Okay, there we go. Now, if you want this to look nicer, what I would do is I would add circles. Okay. And then what you'd want to do, see, this is the color black here. So over here, I'm going to make this black if it allows me to. Color black. Okay. And then what I would do is I would make this white. And then I'd put this circle on top of it. And then what I do is I hit Control left square bracket, which will make it go down in the Z order. Now I notice the circle is not inside of this container, so it needs to be in there. Okay, I need to reposition it and hit the Control left square bracket to move it down. Okay, very good. You see how that looks nicer? And if we were to do them all, it looks nicer in my opinion. I'm gonna do copy paste. And I think it gave me the label, which is not what I wanted. I want to take this circle and I want to copy paste that. There we go. And we just need one more. And because I think it makes it look so much better than what it was before, I think it's worth it to do this. Now I'm going to go over to the comment section. And so Mary says, team site versus communication site. Yeah, I did create a new SharePoint site. And the reason why I'm going to answer this, it's a little unrelated, but it's going to be quick to answer. How I understand team site versus communication site, communication site is more for like a department intranet site where people are displaying information. Team site is more for collaboration. So that's why I really don't think it matters for the SharePoint list, but I always create a team site. Now, if there's a SharePoint expert that wants to clarify or correct me on anything, you're fine to do so. And then we have one that says, what if instead of using the only text fields for the name and the email, we use, for example, the person type? Nope. Do not use a complex type. Now it's a little better with Dataverse, but for SharePoint, it's not good. Because you try to filter on that, you're going to have some delegation problems. Okay, but I didn't finish what they said here. For example, the person type and take the data directly from the users. Now, I don't know what you mean directly from the users, so I'll allow you to expound on that a little bit if you'd like. Now, we do have this blue color. I'd sort of like to put these colors like this right here. I'm going to go up to app formulas. Now, these other colors really aren't a part of the theme. I guess they could be. Let's group them here. And I'll say blue. And we have RGBA. Okay. And then I know we've got a red. I'm going to paste that. I know it's not red, but yellow. And then maybe a green. Okay. I'll go back over here. And I'm going to grab this blue, which I already did. Here is the yellow. And we could reuse these colors elsewhere in the app. Okay, so there's the yellow. Here's the green. And there's the red. And I would recommend never use a pure red. A pure red is going to be hard on the eyes. If you are going to use a pure red, you only want to use that for errors. Paste that in there. Some also like to do with especially constants. Sometimes in patch statements, I like to sort of align the values that I'm putting inside of columns like this. Makes it easier to look at, in my opinion. So we have all these colors. Now what we can do is we can reference the theme. So I'm gonna get the circle and then that label. And then I'm going to go to fill. Actually, it's going to be different between the two. So the fill, instead of black, it's going to be blue. Okay. I'm going to copy that. And then instead of fill, this is actually the color, the font color. And I don't want to leave those literal values. Like if you have to spell something out or hard code it like this, like these numbers are not coming from variables. I would call that a literal value. I don't like any literal values. I like to avoid them as much as possible and replace those with variables. So instead of that, I'll say yellow. And for this one here, I'm going to do a paste. There we go. And for the green, I'm going to do that and say green. Copy that, go to the circle, paste that there. And here for the red color, we are going to say red. Yes. Very good. Now we do have some text boxes. I thought, yeah. Where are our numbers? Am I? Oh, there it's in these text boxes here. Okay, so I'm going to take that. And what I want to do with these is I want to move them to the top. Bring to the front. Okay. So for this one, here we go. We want to make sure all these are actually have a white foreground color. Okay, as long as the color behind it is a darker color. White's not going to look good. It's not going to have good contrast if the other color is light as well. Make sure these are all centered. These labels are a little bit big. So this is a little more time consuming, but when I work on apps, if it looks good, if I'm happy with the design, I don't know, it just makes it more fun to work on. If I don't like the look and feel and everything, then that's probably weird. That's probably one of the weird things, in idiosyncrasy, huh? Um, okay, so we've got all this. Now we might want the text to be a little bit bigger. So we'll bring this up to maybe 17. That looks a bit nicer. And I'm going to make this bold to make it stand out a little more. Okay. And then these aren't evenly spaced. Now, normally I would go through and make sure everything is evenly spaced and maybe even make it dynamic. But I'm going to leave it as is because I spent too much time on that. Okay. The next thing we need to go to is, well, we got this gallery here, and I'm just so excited about this new feature. Copy that. Okay. And I'm going to say paste. Yeah, there's our gallery. That doesn't look all that great until we fix some things here. Okay, I'm gonna go over here. I'm gonna grab this gallery. This is a gallery as well. I'm gonna collapse all these groups that I don't need to look at. Okay, and I'm gonna paste it here. Very good. I'll bring this down. Very good. And I'll pull this. It really doesn't need to be that wide, so I'm gonna bring this over. Okay, now I'm gonna go over to search and replace and do this all over again. Yeah, should probably fix a lot of things. So there's 32 problems that it's going to solve. Okay, now what does that have a problem with now? Okay, so this is a carryover from the old days of Power Apps, where inside of a template, which is the first record, the first row of the gallery, before you didn't have to say this item. Okay, but now you do. So we have ticket type. Now, what is the data source for this gallery? The data source, oh, this was a table or a tab. So we'll get to that this item thing here in a moment. The ticket types. Now, what are the ticket types that we have over in the Excel document? And I don't think I created a table for. Yeah. So they use this. It's almost like a navigational bar, or something to sort of get around on this thing. It's like almost like vertical tabs. Am I saying that right? Yeah, vertical, up and down. Almost using that as a vertical tabs. Now, what I would do instead is I would create static values, or at least put them over in the app formulas. That would be sort of cool, wouldn't it? So I'm going to say fx, and it's not really a nav bar, but I'm going to say filtering, um, ticket filtering, do the equal sign. I have my curly braces, and I'm going to paste all that. Okay. And I'm going to try to zoom in on here so you guys can see my code. Okay. Well, each one of these is going to be a record. And I want to use the table function. Okay. Indent things over. There we go. Now each record will have, let's just say value. No. So do a double quote, and I'm going to move this. Did you know, Virginia, that you can drag your code around?
Yes, I've seen you do it in class.
I love it. If you ever need to do a block of code within Power Apps, the same as C, C++, JavaScript, C Sharp, Java, you get the /* in the end, you got a star /. So we have the name. Now, something that I might want to put in here is something like sort order. Okay. And we could do our own sort order there, and it's going to be numeric. Now, when you create more than one field, what you should have is commas. Do you see up here where we created this? We have got commas that separate these individually. Okay, so we do have that. I'm trying to hit tab because I want it to all line up there. Okay. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to copy and paste this. This will be 2. I'm going to take that out. We need a comma here. So I'm going to copy all this. Okay, so there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I need to paste the 7 more times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, I'll go through here and change these numbers. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Did I paste too many times? I might have. All right, so new tickets, cut that. Put that there. And I'm actually going to move that upward. I think that's going to help me out. Paste it right there. Tickets in progress. 3. Tickets on hold. Tickets closed. Tickets older than 3 days. There we go. And by the way, guys, I just want to remind you that if you want something a little bit more slow paced, that's not all covered in 2.5 hours with all my little rabbit trails I go down, be sure to check out the crash course. It's completely free. I used to sell the crash course. I used to call it the master class. I made a mistake by taking some marketing advice from somebody in marketing, and they're like, "Yeah, master class." And a master class is learning from, like, let's say you want to make the perfect egg from Gordon Ramsay. Well, you're not going to be a master in cooking by taking a master class from Gordon Ramsay. What you're doing is you're learning from somebody who's you're learning from the master, or you're learning from somebody who's a master at that. Sometimes people, they buy my $27 course and they're like, this is basic stuff, I'm not a master, so I had to change that to something like the crash. It's more descriptive. It's a better moniker for that. All tickets, new tickets, tickets in progress, tickets on hold, closed. Okay, this is all looking good. Okay. So now that we have defined this and we use the table, so we numbered them all. So we got 8 records here. We go back to our screen. We can go to this gallery. It's expecting a table type. I'm going to paste that in. Look at that. Isn't that nice? So now that's not, uh, there's really no need for that to be in a database. Okay, but there it is. Let's see if we can find anything that we can fix right away. Ew, that looks a little not so great to look at here. Now, if I hit format text, it's going to clean it up a little bit. That looks a little bit nicer. Okay. So it's going to filter on this filter gallery. We're going to filter based on what was this error? This is the on select. Okay. So depending upon what item they click, they're using a local variable type. Okay. And this actually violates the recommended best practice by Microsoft to prefix all your local variables with LOC. Okay. So I'm going to double click type and I'm going to go over to search and replace. Every time we see type, now that's problematic because we could have the word type in other places like our labels and stuff. So that's yet another reason why you always want to follow these best practices. So I'm going to replace type with LOC type. And I need to look through this because, well, the on select, see, type is all over the place here. If I said go to formula, see that the tickets. Now this isn't going to be a local. So this is what Kurt calls coding yourself in a corner. Like if you don't implement best practice, if you don't structure your database right, later on you're going to end up pulling your hair out of stress or this type of stuff. Okay, so this one in particular, I don't want to replace that. Let's open this up. Yeah, ticket types. Yeah, I don't want these. So I'm gonna try to unselect all these. And I liked it when I could just, yeah, see there's type there. See where type is all over the place. You can't be calling variables type. It's like calling a variable X. At least X isn't used as much as something like type. Um, okay, that one does need to be replaced. So I feel like I've got a little bit of a mess on my hands because we're bringing over that other stuff. It's 51 too. What a mess. I'm going to open this up, ticket types. Ticket types. So what's the data? So you know what it's going to force me to do. Actually, I could do a replace on this. Ticket types. And we'll say value instead. That should fix this up. Replace all 16. Okay, I think that fixed a lot of problems. And so they're using this almost like a select case or a switch, if you're familiar with other branching constructs in other languages. So if it's this value, and I don't like to do things the way it does here. Like if it's this value, then this happens. If it's this value, then this happens. And then what I'd want to do is line these up to make the code look much nicer. And it's more maintainable. You come back, like, ugh, what is all this stuff? You see that? So this code is, whoops, more maintainable. There are different aspects of coding that you want to pay attention to. Like you want to make sure that your program, your application performs well. Okay. Um, and don't be tempted to call that responsive. Responsive means that it's going to respond to the size of the browser, the size of the host, um, based on the device that's being used. Then there's also security, and then there's also maintainability. There's all these aspects of software development that you need to keep in mind as you develop programs. So we do an update context here, and this is a mess. Okay, I'm gonna do, that looks good. And it may not feel like we're making much progress yet, but I don't believe in cutting corners whenever you're writing a program like this, because any corners you cut now, it's going to come back and bite you in the rear later on. Um, and I don't play that game. Okay, so we got that. This update context. Yeah, I shouldn't have tabbed that so much there. Very good. Now somebody else might like, oh, you just made it more complicated. To me, this makes it more readable, more maintainable. Okay, and it looks right on. So when I look at this, it just makes much more sense. And we have no errors. So I'm going to hit save early, save often. And I'm going to start getting into these things here. Now you see, when I see stuff like this is an operator. And you don't want the operators to run in with everything. And so I always like to have good space. Now this is where we're going to need this item. Okay, I'm going to get out of that. I'm going to hit delete. There we go. Okay, now it doesn't have it doesn't like this owner thing. Well, in SharePoint, this is going to be called created by. Now, I do realize created by, and notice it does have a space. And also realize I did not create that column. Who created it? Well, you know what? I did do something right. I did an owner name, and owner email. Okay, there we go. Now, if I had to, I would have referenced the created by, but when you're filtering by, you're probably going to end up with some delegation problems. So I'm glad that I had that owner name in there. And I'll just go into all these little measle things here, and I will type in this item dot priority. So I'm going to get that right there. Make sure there's always a space before and after your operators. It's not required by the language syntax rules, but it just makes your code more readable, more maintainable. And look at this. We have, now they're using forms. Now, here's a question for you, Virginia. Are you using a form in your application?
No.
Okay. I'm very glad to hear that.
Yeah, and you don't like forms, so that's a big no-no.
And some of the other guys don't like forms as well. I mean, it's a toss up. Some people might be a little offended, and if people use forms, I don't care if you use forms or not. Now, if you're one of my students where I have a vested interest in your long-term success, I'm still gonna be like, why are you using forms? Because there's gonna be someday you're gonna need my help, and I'm gonna come in to help you, and I'm like, oh, we're gonna have to rip out this form and do it right. So anyway, we're doing a navigate here. That's what I'm moving around. The navigate's going to be fine, but this edit form is not going to be okay. I'm going to take that out, but I'm going to leave it in there. Oh, Copilot's going to generate some code for me. It looked like it was about to generate some code for me, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Make sure we're following up on the comments here. So one gives me an okay there, and then Maria says, "What happens when more than 500 closed tickets are there?" That is a great question, and that's something we're going to talk about in the workshop, but I'll also talk about it here. So what I would do there in that particular case is, do you really need to see closed tickets that are, older than 90 days? Probably not. Now, would it mess up our reports and our dashboard when we say tickets closed? Well, what we would do would probably in parentheses is say, hey, in the tickets closed in the last 90 days. I mean, year after year, that number is just going to keep going up. So I would either segment that by year, and you can nestor your filter statements in a way to filter out something under the 2000 or under the 500 where it's meaningful. And then any more filters that you wrap around that, even if you have delegation warnings, you're still going to be fine. And we'll be delving more into that this Friday. Okay. So let's go. I'm trying to get all these errors taken care of here. We have another edit form, which I'm going to take out. And it looks like we're going to need some more pages to our application. Now, right now we just have a screen one and screen two. What is the first screen called here? Now look at this, dashboard page. Now, Virginia, tell me, is that a good name for a screen?
No,
Why not? Why is that not a good screen for a name?
it's more like for me, it's a reporting for me. Dashboard is
Reporting?
it's more Power BI driven for me. Um,
Okay.
and I would just say home page. I mean home screen. I'm pretty
Yeah.
simple with my naming conventions. I'm not too elegant.
So what they recommend, again, this is a best practice set forth by Microsoft years. I think that white paper was put out there maybe 5 or 6 years ago. So it's been out there for a while. You know how we deal with SharePoint list and table names? We don't put spaces. Well, it's the exact opposite with screen names. We want to put spaces in there because we want them very human readable. Let's say somebody has a vision disability. You work for a government entity or an entity, an organization that's trying to make their applications accessible. Remember, I just talked about the different aspects of software. You've got performance, you got security, you got maintainability. Well, another one is accessibility, and those are for people with disabilities. But
Hmm.
you know, you need to think about this for everybody because even people that don't identify as blind, perhaps they're colorblind, and there still needs to be a really good deal of contrast between things. So you need to keep these things in mind. So those with vision disabilities, they'll use a screen reader. And if you don't have a space in here, how's it going to pronounce a
Yeah.
word? Page, like, and also we don't call these pages, these are screens. Okay, so
Hmm.
this is going to be the dashboard screen. Now, I might call that the home screen, but they call it dashboard, and it sort of does look like a dashboard. It's got some things there at the top. So I'm going to go along with dashboard screen. Okay. Now, the second screen that we have here, what do we have down here? We have a ticket details page. Okay. So let's create a screen. I'll rename this one. Now, we don't want page, we want a space and screen. Okay. In fact, ticket details. And what I use is proper casing. Proper casing is you capitalize the first letter of each word. Okay. Um, so that's what proper. Camel casing is you lowercase the first word or the first letter in the first word, and then the first letter and all the subsequent words are capitalized, and then lower cases they're all lowercase. Now you have functions and power apps called upper, lower, proper. Now there's no camel function, but you get the idea there. Okay, so here we've got this screen. We've named it properly. And by the way, that the coding guidelines that I keep referring to, you just do a search for it and you'll find it. Microsoft White Paper, Power Apps, coding guidelines, and rightfully so, you might actually get a blog post by Matthew Devaney who has augmented or extended that into more areas that it is sort of left out. And it's really good stuff. I really like Matthew's work. Okay, for screen three, I'm going to paste that name there. Create new. See how hard that is to read?
Yeah.
Ticket screen. Okay, now we got that one. How many more screens do we need? These, I think we might be able to get away with maybe a single app admin screen, but those should be easy to deal with. Okay, so we do have a form somewhere on, yeah, new ticket form. What I find interesting, they have ticket details. Now, this is meant more for editing a ticket, right? And you've got this one, which is create a new ticket.
Hmm.
So it's the same record. Why do they have two screens, one for new, one for edit? Now, you could make the argument that, well, the create new is always created used by the user, and they're only going to put pieces of information where the service desk technician is going to be entering more information. So you could do that. Now, why would a user need to know all these metrics? Uh, I don't know. If you want your users to know that, maybe they would like to see it. Um, Perhaps if you're the last of the line and they're not going to get back to you for 3 months, maybe you don't need to see that this on hold is like 500, you know, or there's 500 new tickets in front of you, that type of thing. I don't know if I'd want to see that or not. Okay. So essentially, what they have are two screens. I might make that one now. In yours, have you gotten to that point in the application? Did you use one screen, two screens, or how did you go about that?
I am not there yet, but from the wireframe that I have, I'm thinking I'm going to end up with, if indeed each of those tabs on the left, which you were
Mhm.
saying the navigation, is a screen of itself, I'm going to end up with 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 screens because I'm adding more than what is here. So I will have
Okay.
10 on the list on the left side to pick
Okay.
from.
Something to realize here. It almost looks like a navigational bar, where you've got vertical tabs. It's sort
Mhm.
of one way to look at it. But these are actually filters for the most part, not completely. It's going to filter this gallery here in the middle. So these are sort of, it's like a filtering control for this thing here in the middle. But when you get down to over in their app, don't they've got something in here for the on select. Now their code might be messed up because it's such an old app. They had a click, yeah, they have an on select on a group. Okay. And look at this. They have if all tickets, then okay, and it's just assigning this type variable. And then they use that type to filter the other one. But it's not all like date type text today. So there's a little bit of weird stuff going on here. Like tickets older than 3 days. Well, they're putting stuff in here to help that gallery filter. So it's not really a menu. Now you could add some stuff on here for menu type of stuff. Okay. But I would say if we don't create, I mean, now you probably know this term, but there's a term in software development called CRUD. Like we'll create a CRUD screen, and CRUD is an acronym: CRUD. C is for create, R is for read, U is for update, and D is for delete. So those are the four operations those are the four things that you can do with a record in a database. You can read it, you can insert a new one, you can update an existing one, you can delete one that's there. Um, so when you say create a CRUD screen for departments, well, not every user, the users aren't going to go there, but Victoria, you or your boss or whoever is the app admin of that application will need to have a screen they can go. No, you could ask them, hey, just go to the SharePoint list and add all the departments, and boom, it's done. We don't need a CRUD screen. Just use SharePoint for that. Now the tech, you could do the same thing there. These are simple enough as long as only app admins are accessing them. I might allow them to do that. But for the tickets, anything that the user's doing, I definitely want a screen there. And I want to make sure I'm keeping up with the comments here. Um, yeah, it looks like we're talking about screen names and stuff. I feel pretty good about the screen names that I picked there. Now we got about 20 minutes. Now, what we could do, Victoria, if and I doubt we're going to finish the whole app tonight. We could finish this up maybe later in the week, perhaps.
Okay.
I don't know. Um, let's get rid of all these errors here, though. That's really bothering me. Okay, so we have a ticket detail page. So I don't like to create two screens, one for add, one for edit. So I'll actually call this ticket edit ticket screen. And now I don't need this one. Keep things simple. There's another acronym for software development called DRY. Don't repeat yourself. So what you'll find is you got something over. Let's say we kept it with two screens, one for the user when they create it, one when they edit. Well, let's say you got a bug fix. You got the bug in both screens and you fix it in one place. Now you got to remember, oh, what other screens do the same thing? And now I got to, now you're just going to have a nightmare on your hands because, I mean, this is a simple. application. As your application progresses and matures, or more and more features coming out that you add to the application, um, it slowly becomes more and more complex.
Mhm.
And if you don't keep things as simple as possible, it very easily can get out of hand very quickly, much more quickly than you would want it to happen. Marcus says, how do you restrict the user from accessing the SharePoint list via other Microsoft tools like lists, or users can connect via Power Apps connector and edit? Yeah. That's one of the reasons I don't like to use SharePoint, because they could figure out. Now, I don't tell them about the SharePoint site. I don't give them a list of the SharePoint site, but they could probably go to SharePoint and probably figure it out somehow, some way. And what I do is I pull a dirty little trick, which they may not like, which is I would go over. So ticket is the main screen, the main table. So I'll click on edit data and I'll go over to this. And what I'll do is I'll go into Power Apps. I'll customize the form. And when this comes, it's going to bring up Power Apps. It's a power, SharePoint's going to allow me to modify its adding and editing screen, and they split it up into two different screens. Um, it allows us to do that inside of Power Apps. Okay, so I'm going to wait for this thing to load up here. Yeah, one says you can do it with a security group in Azure. Okay. One I'd love to learn more, and if you wouldn't mind give us more details over in the school environment, that would be very useful. But I'll show you what I do. So I don't want to look at the fields. Look at this, Virginia. We have a screen now. I think in the past I saw these as two different screens. So in my opinion, this is better. They're only using one. Okay. So this is a screen, and it's like a mobile, it's a portrait landscape type of, and you know what? I think we might be able to change that if we want. Like you can go in here and change the settings, So we got classic, um, go in here, and what was I gonna, yeah, go over to display. And look, so the little app is gonna, the screen's gonna be modified. It's gonna appear on the side just like the other. We can change it to landscape if we wanted to. I just want to show you what's available here. You know what I do is I just rip out the form.
Wow. Okay.
And then what I do is like, you could put a little animated GIF like, you can't edit it this way. And I say, um, please modify the data through the application. Um, and what I do is I provide a link to the application. So they're like, what application am I supposed to use? No, I'll provide a little link here. And when they click on this label, you'll use a function called launch. What are you going to pass to the launch? Okay. So we could say, okay, well, let's actually step through this. Please use the app instead. Okay. And that's what will appear here. Now, what I'd recommend doing, you spread this out and you center align it. Okay. Make it a little bit bigger so people like me can read it. No, not 60. That's silly. Is I'll make it underline and I'll go down here and I make it undeniably look like a link. Now that isn't pure blue. So if you want it pure blue, you can. Okay. And then what I do over in advanced on the on, if they click on that, they think it's a link. So I make it look like a link. And then I say launch. Now, if you do a search on YouTube for Darren Easton launch, you're going to find a great video that I did where I go into all the details of all the parameters and everything. How do we get the URL for that? Well, we go back over to our app. And what you're going to do is you're going to make sure you save it and everything. Now you can click back to get there. I'm just going to open a new tab. I'm going to go over to Power Apps and I'll see a listing of all my apps. You see Service Desk App Rewrite. I'm going to go into details. Look at that. There's the link right there. So I'll copy that, go over to SharePoint, and I was modifying the SharePoint list over here. Yeah. And instead of a string literal, I'm going to paste in, well, actually it is a string literal, but I'm going to paste it inside the double quotes there. Okay. Now what I like to do is like to give it some parameter. Now you could pass parameters into, the deep linking thing that we were talking about earlier this week.
Mm-hmm.
You could pass parameters into that app here if
Okay.
you wanted to. But right now, I think you do that with curly braces. Okay. Then I'll do a third parameter and I'll say target. There we go. Launch target. And I want that to open up in a new tab. I don't want to replace the current one. I just always do that. I just think it's you're mean to the user if you take away their current tab. Maybe they didn't want to necessarily, they thought it would open up in a new tab and you just messed them up somehow. Now, what I do is I hit publish to SharePoint. Now, I'm going to give you guys a secret. It takes a while for it to show up in SharePoint. Now, maybe they've improved it. I don't want to see that SharePoint. I want to see this one. Edit data. See, it's trying to open that up in a different, no. Okay. So that is right. Cause okay. So if I click on back to SharePoint, it's going to take me. So it doesn't want you to be over there modifying it and then go back to SharePoint. Now, if I click on new, what are you going to notice? Okay. It actually did it really quick. Usually I have to hit there and hit refresh for like 3 minutes for it to show up. Okay. So what happens when they say, I want to create a new record? Oh, what if they click on that? It's going to go to the app.
That's
Okay,
good.
so it's going to encourage them to go there. Now, is it foolproof? No, not yet. Now, what if there was a record there and I said edit? It would come up here like this. Now, they got save and cancel, copy link and stuff, but that's not going to do anything. If I hit save, what is it going to do? It's going to do nothing. Now, there's this edit and grid view. That's how they can get around it. Okay, so what you have to do there is you're going to modify the view. Okay, now why am I going down this? People pay big money for this. This is like stuff that took me a long time to figure out or to learn from others. Um, and what I would want to do is you need to edit the view. Yeah, so we have all items. Let's go in here. And I think there's a setting in a view that allows you to say, hey, don't allow them to do the grid thing. And I'm not seeing it though. Maybe it's not in the view. I'm going to look at the comments, see if anybody knows. Maybe it's settings for the list. Advanced settings. Let's see if it's in here. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Look at that. Create and edit access. Specify which items used are allowed to create and edit. Look at that. You can turn that off. Boom. Now they can't create and edit anything. And hopefully it allows us to do it through Power Apps. Yeah, look at this. This is good stuff. Quick edit. Allow items in this list to be edited using quick edit and the details pane. Nope, I don't like that. All right, so I'm going to click OK. Now, if it doesn't allow us to, there's the first one that I came across. We might have to reverse that if it doesn't allow us to do that. Yeah, and Mary says that it's in the advanced settings. Very good, thank you. Yeah, I was gonna look silly if I couldn't find it. All right, so we're gonna go back here, and we were going through here, and we're gonna comment out any of that. And I'm going to look at our screen names here. You know what I should do is I just grab the name of the screen so I can just paste it whenever I see a navigate. Oh, look at that. Let's put a space around those operators, and I'm going to say this item dot. There we go. Fixed. Oh, didn't like that. Date created for the ticket. Okay, so here we're going to say created. That's the date time in which it was created. It is a complex. No, it's not. The created by is a complex. And with a complex, what I mean by that is if I said created by, I don't like that space in the middle. You see, it's not a string. It's not a simple. I have to hit dot, and then look, we got claims, department, display name, all that type of stuff. So if you try to use that in filtering statements, you'll delegation problem. So I'm going to say created. So that's a good date and time. Date and time is what I would refer to as a simple type. And I'll go in here, and I think I've got the name of the screen right there. Of course, we need the parentheses, not parentheses, apostrophes. Okay. Now, what is it not like about this? This is incompatible types. Oh, these are all the parameters that we're passing in there. Okay. I do like passing parameters in the screens instead of using globals. And the reason why is because if you use globals all over the place, you're going to end up having logical bugs that are very hard to debug and troubleshoot. Edit ticketing screen. That is what I called it. And it's got a problem with the types. We can't evaluate your formula because the context variable types are incompatible with the type of values in other places in your app. Okay. Well, let's not deal with that right now because I'm pretty sure I'll probably deal with that differently. Like I probably like to just pass that as a single item instead of having all those parameters. Talk about a maintenance nightmare. Or it's a lot of tedious stuff that you got to work with there. And okay. So, Victoria, tell me about your features that you want in your app that do not exist in the original app. I think you were talking about like questions, like maybe you want to have like a survey or not in a survey, maybe just have them like a list of questions that you want them to answer. Is that right?
Yeah, because it's a little different than how they have it here. Here you're supposed to enter your problem, whereas with my application, it's gonna be static for the most part. When they're answering the questions, they're
Hmm.
all gonna be a drop down so that we can contain what we are expecting to see from the sales rep, and then use that data and use it not only to help us with what the user needs, but for reporting purposes, like what is happening a lot frequently with out in the field that we can correct. It's like a coaching tool, if you will. So we don't want just free text. We want to make sure that we have certain options for them to choose from, which is different from here. Here you
Hmm.
enter your problem and that's it, period, free text, but not in mine. So it'll be driven by those drop down choices. And then another thing too, I want to add a reporting page. They want to know, I
Okay.
know you have the dashboard already up here on the top, but they want to
Yeah.
see like charts, they want to see graphs.
That
So
sounds
that
like
will be
fun.
another page. Yeah.
Now, have you
Oh, and
gone through Kurt's material and all the charts and collections?
not yet, but I've seen them. I've seen you guys promoting it, and I will get to that. One other thing too that I want to add is by filter by departments, because I have 9 different departments.
Hmm.
If anybody from any particular department goes into the tool, I want them to be able to go to their specific tickets for that department.
That makes sense. And that's something that I did in my larger ticketing system.
Hmm.
Um, so that's a good feature to add there as well. Now, do you have all these requirements like in a requirements document or anything?
Yes, I do. I
Oh,
used I
wow.
used I used your your
I almost
link.
expected you to say no for some reason.
No, I do. I have everything documented in the business requirement document.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Very good. Um, Now it's giving me some issues here, and I think what we need is like a this item. All right, this item dot. And guys, what the beauty of creating a ticketing system is that there's so many um, similarities. There's so many elements that you might need that's similar in other applications. Like it's a workflow. You know, you're keeping track of a workflow. Somebody has a need, they submit it, it gets assigned to somebody. Let's say I ask for a new laptop. Well, there probably has to be an approval process. I mean, there's all kinds of cool stuff that you do with the ticketing system.
Can I say
Um,
something to add to what you were
sure.
asking me, how it's going to be different? I'm going to incorporate Power Automate for the approvals that you just mentioned.
Uh-huh.
And this Power Automate will send out either an email or a Teams chat to that specific department via a
Hmm.
365 group, and have them give them the ability to take action within that notification without having to go to the app itself, and have it update if possible.
Okay.
So that's another thing that I'm going to do a little different. I don't know that this is doing it, but I don't think it is. And I have an
Well,
interesting question for you. This might be
mhm.
a beneficial question for everybody.
Okay.
So, is it possible to send out a text message when these tickets get updated, like their statuses change? Can you send out an SMS or text message to a
Absolutely.
user? You can? Okay, cool.
Hmm. Now,
Okay.
natively within Power Apps, without using any type of connectors to some external service and that type of stuff, I did this. I wrote a little CRM system for this guy that was auto detailing my wife and I's car. We bought this used car, and they're like, we're not going to clean it up. Here's 150 bucks if you want to hire an auto detailer to clean it. So we did that. And this guy came like, hey, how do you keep track of all your customers? And he just holds up his phone, and I'm like, how do you keep all your customers separate from like your mom and your dad and your friends and your family? He goes, oh, I put little lightning emojis beside the business. I'm like, oh man. I'm like, let me write you a power up.
That's
And
nice.
what was cool was I I created it in a way so he could text and call directly from the Power Apps app. And when you try to use the SMS aspect, it just opened up his text, and I could throw in all of the predefined text that he would want. Like the night before he was going to go out to a client and clean their cars, he would go like, "Hey, looking forward to meeting you. I'll see you tomorrow at 9 a.m." And all that stuff was pulled in by the day. I wrote all the code to pull that data in, throw it in the text, and all I had to do is hit the text and hit send. And then I kept track of everything that was sent within the app. So you can do that. Now, if somebody's using your app within an application, or you're in an enterprise like you are, you're not going to be relying on that. What you want is like an SMS service,
Hmm.
and you're probably going to have to pay for it in some way, or your organization will pay for it, and you'll probably need an API key. So it's a little more involved, but it's definitely doable. It's not that hard of a thing to implement. Yeah, there's all kinds of things that you can do. I mean, we have over 1,000 connectors, and we can write our own code. We have Power Automate. We got all kinds of tools at our disposal.
Okay.
So I think this is going to be a fun application. I'll get with you on maybe some additional times. I believe. Okay, today's Tuesday. Um, I might. I think we could finish this up in another session like this. Um, and let me look at my calendar and sort of look at things. What I got going on Thursday. Might be able to do it this Thursday. Um, Now, as of right now, it's free. So we might. And are you free Thursday night
Yes,
from
I am.
at
Hmm.
the same time? Okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to put that on my calendar. And for all of you that are watching right now, we could do a follow up on Thursday night. Now, if that doesn't end up working out, we'll just do it next week or something, or maybe Saturday morning. Who knows? So I'm going to put this Thursday night, 4 p.m. all the way up until 6:30, and I'm going to call it live stream. I live and die by my calendar. If it's not on my calendar, it's not going to happen. So it is on my calendar now. Now, as you can imagine, now what I did, you guys may not have noticed this, but if you're inside of a Power Apps application, you hit F12, you're going to create an MS app file. Okay. Um, and I'm going to upload this file so you guys can have access to it. How about that? So
Awesome.
I'm going to go down here. Now, if you guys are new to the group, check out this learn environment. I'm going to paste that over here so you guys have access to that. But check out the PPC, and if you need support, I've got different ways you can get support from us. You can email everybody on my staff if you need to to get help. So I've got members of my staff going out here, make sure everybody's questions is answered, and as I have time, I go out here and answer them. But the accelerator students is my top priority. But there's all kinds of information about the workshop. If you want to know more about the workshop, it's only $25 a month, and right now we're doing them every week, and they're like 4 hour sessions. Um, and a lot of people have said that they love them. They absolutely love them. What else was I going to point out? I thought I did a thread on this live stream because I'm going to upload this MS app file for you guys. I thought I put
It's
it
under
here.
announcements, isn't it? Under, oh, well, it's, you're under all.
maybe I put it, no, I didn't do that there. Um,
I saw it there, Darren,
you
too.
saw it there?
Yeah, I did.
Am I just going too fast or what?
No, I did
Did you
see it
see it
there.
before?
Yeah, before I joined, I saw it
There it
both on the
is.
bottom.
So
Okay,
it goes
so
to show you how active the community is, guys.
mhm.
You like this thumbnail? That is a circle. I don't really look like that, guys. All right, I'm gonna go in here. I'm gonna edit this. Look how nice school is. This is so much nicer than, let's say, YouTube comments. A lot of times I get questions in YouTube comments and I try to answer them, but the community here is much more conducive to ask and answering questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload this MSAP file so you guys can get access to it right now. So let's say you followed along, you didn't want to have to do every single step. Now, I guess the biggest part that you're going to have to do is creating all those SharePoint lists. Now, eventually I want to do some material on creating Power Automate flows that will automatically create SharePoint sites, lists, and columns and all that type of stuff. But I'm not there yet. I haven't had the time to do that stuff yet. Um, there is the folder and there is the MSApp file. So I have to be careful not to go in here and get too excited and add anything to the app without you guys. So make sure you guys are all up to date here. So here is the MSApp file. Now the question is, does everybody know how to work with an MSApp file? So if you're in, now if you do a search for Darren East on YouTube and do a search for import export, okay, you're gonna come across a little 3-minute video and I talk about exporting and importing. So you saw what I did. I hit F12 and it created it. Now if you don't have sometimes people don't have a keyboard with F12. So you go down here and you say just download a copy and it's going to give you an MS app file. Okay. And it's actually a zip file. I mean, it has an extension of MS app, but if you change that extension to zip, you can notice that you can unzip it and look at all the files inside there. But if you're inside of a project, just get into one of your projects or create a little throwaway project. Go in here and hit Control O for open. Okay. And then you hit browse and then you go find the MSF file that you downloaded from me and you'll upload it and then it will create it. And that's how you get it. That's how you import a little MSF file. Now, I would sometimes people, why do you do it that way? Why don't you create a solution package? I'm like, just for simplicity's sake, you know, like I use SharePoint for the teaching, but in real, I always try to use Dataverse or SQL Server if I have the choice. Yeah, solution package would be the better, but if I was trying to share a project file with you, think about all the steps that I have to go through to create a solution file, and then do I do manage, unmanaged? Do I create a new publisher? I mean, there's all kinds of new things. So it's just really simple and easy just to create an MSF file like that. Hopefully, you guys found that helpful. Hopefully, we'll see you guys soon. Now, I do have some really cool stuff to share with you guys here. If I can find it, all kinds of cool stuff. Yeah, I'll share with you guys this.
Key ingredient for the hundreds of people that we've helped dominate in their organization. With this one skill, you're able to simplify processes for countless tasks like tracking leads, doing inspections, logging attendance, booking desks in a shared office, generating reports, tracking employee performance, and the list goes on. If you have a project that you need to get done, or you're an IT professional or a developer, or if you plan to eventually do some freelancing work with Microsoft Power Apps, I am literally the only person you need to accomplish your goals. Spreadsheets and all the old ways of doing things are becoming redundant, and the people who are able to build Power Apps are going to accelerate their professional career so much faster than everyone else who's okay being average. I have over 20 years experience as a software developer and have been working in Power Apps for over 3 years. We have lots of course material for you, but if you're eager to accelerate your expertise with Power Apps at a much faster pace and want to work directly with me, this is what me and my team are going to do for you. Number one, we're going to figure out exactly what projects and skills skills you're working on, and the overall end goal. Number 2, we're going to get clear on exactly what data sources are needed for your projects. If it's a particular project with a deadline, we're going to work with you to make sure that you meet that deadline. And number 4, we're going to work with you to make sure that you master the platform. So not only can you finish any projects that you're currently working on, but the projects that come up in the future. And you might want to take those skills and become a freelancer in the future. If that sounds like something that you're interested in, and you want to expedite the process of being able to build apps that can literally be used for years, and you want to be an important asset to your organization and any future companies you work for, click the button below and we can have a 15-minute chat about what you're needing and how we can help. So you're going to like this video next. Let's see if they're right. Or you can select this playlist, which I've selected for you based on the content you're currently watching. Guys, gotta hurry, click one of them. Otherwise, YouTube's gonna autoplay some other video, which you probably don't want. Thanks.
Darren, who's got the power? I got